this video, we'll be going over our Make It Personal program that we offer free to our Messenger customers. Our program is intended to be used with our pre-printed or blank stock purchased through us at Messenger. Also, this is not designed to be used with the standard register book pages with the headings and the lines on them. We offer border-only MIP pages free with the purchase of any book sold by Messenger. Just ask your customer service rep. So to kick things off here, I'm going to go over just the basics of how Make It Personal works. First off, we start with a case profile. Make It Personal, we have an integration with some of the other funeral home software providers. And by software, I mean the management programs like a Kraken, like an SRS, like a Funeral Tech. We have a list out there on the help page that you can kind of refer to. You can either import them that way you don't have to enter the information twice, or you can build your own, and that's just manually typing in the person's information. So the first piece of this would be the case profile, and it's exactly as it says. It's a mini database of their information with names, dates. You can put service info, photographs in it, and it'll hold their designs in their case profile as well. So that's all the first piece of this. The second piece of this would be the templates. Now the templates themselves is when you create a design, you pick a template, and it's going to be specific to whether it's a register book, a service folder, a prayer card. It's going to have the layout of the design, as it says what fields and where, how they're positioned, styled, fonts, pulling in pictures, things like that. And what that's going to do is in step 3, it's going to put these two together. So when you do create that design, it's going to pull from the case profile, implement it into the template, and it'll push out a design based off of that template and that person's information into it. That's just the basics of how the Make It Personal program works. So let me go ahead and log out. One thing to keep in mind here with the Make It Personal program, but if you ever forget your password, you can always click here, reset the password, put in the username, and what that'll do is it'll shoot out an email. Now keep in mind, it's best practice to go ahead and set up different user accounts at the location. That way, if some people don't have access to a specific email, and if you're sharing a single login, somebody might change it, get access, there's a new password, other people using that same account they don't know, or if they reset it and they don't have access to the email, they're just not going to be able to reset it. And then nobody can log in until they get access to that original email. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and sign in. Now here's our pop-up here. This always has any pertinent information when you first log into the Make It Personal. And we always do put, we post our holiday hours up here as well, as you can see here for Labor Day. And it has a link to the help email and the help page. Let's go ahead and close that out. So first things first, you always initially log in and get into the fast track. Now here in the fast track, you've got a couple options. You can enter a new case, which is simply this information here. You can fill from a past case. Now with the past cases, I can see the list of my past cases here. And now what I was also talking about importing from a management software system, you have the option to do that here if you have a program like SRS, and there's a couple few more out there that actually do what's called an XML file. And if you know anything about Excel, you'll be familiar with an XML format. It's just a data format. If you have a program that does that, you can select to import, select your location, select your file to import, and it's going to be an XML, just like that. I'm not going to do that though, because I've already done it for this case. But those are the basics of the fast track when you first log in. Since we want to do more kind of comprehensive and a better overview of how the whole program works, we're not going to focus so much on the fast track with this. We're going to focus more on the advanced designer, getting into the cases, selecting a design for that case, and then using our advanced designer feature. This would be the fast track. It's more simplistic, but we're going to look at the advanced designer because that shows you the whole scope of the tools with the program. Up here we have menu to the top right. The first thing you have to do when you set up an account, you have to come into location info and settings. So that's step one. Let's look there. Now, by default, what you're going to see right when you first set up your Make It Personal account, this is all going to be blank. You have to come over here, manually click on Add a Location, and then start filling out the information. Once you do that, you can put in a default logo, a default picture. You can save the location. I'm just going to cancel out of that because I've got a bunch of different testing locations right here already put in. So that's always going to be step one. And while we're here, I always like to stay on this page and go over the other information here in location info and settings. We've got custom fields. Anything that is not included in the case information, anything that you don't see that you want to add to it, this is where you come in and you can add to your case's information. So you can put in a spouse date of birth if you wish, spouse date of death, because we don't have those in there by default. I have simply a test field, wedding date, place of marriage. You can put in stuff like that if you wish to incorporate that into your designs. And in the Users tab here, this is more of the management of the Make It Personal program itself. Here you have those different user accounts that you can set up. Now, if you're logged in as the main account, which would be the admin account, you can modify all of these, all the different users. A user level user that you set up for an individual, they can only modify their own information. This is our little universal edit symbol. You can come here, click on edit any of that information, and then to set up a new password, what you would do is simply type in a new password here where it says password, and then also again here where it says re-enter password. And adding a user is simple as having this blanked out. You don't want to be editing anybody's user account information, and you can just put in a new one. Set them up with a simple password. And it's simple as that. I just wanted to show an example, just adding a new user account. And the last tab here would be the autofills. I don't want to save that information. Now, the way the Make It Personal program works, it's set up to be kind of like a web browser autofill. You know how in the browser you can turn on, turn off autofills. Well, the Make It Personal does the same thing. We have our different field types, and then anything that you put into that specific field, you can find them here. Any information, it saves it here in the autofills, and you can kind of run through the list. The reason why this gets kind of important is because if somebody puts in one of these fields and they have a typo in it, or it's a name that they want to remove from the autofill list, you can simply come in here, find the field where it lives. Let's say one of them would be clergy. And let's say I want to get rid of this one that just says rabbi. I can just delete that out. Or you can also edit them. So if I click on the edit for test, I want to change it to test 1, and you can update them. So that's the gist of the location info and settings right here. Let's look back at the menu. Let's get into kind of briefly the rest of it before we go into manage case info. The create new design, that's always up top. This allows you to create a new design no matter where you're at, but you have to be within somebody's case to use the advanced designer. By default, you can always use fast track. And if we click that, it takes us right back to the fast track. And any photo books that you've ordered, the next one down, you can click that. It's just a quick shortcut to those photo books. That way you don't have to run through the list, the design, bring it back up to re-render it. You can find them right here, and you can preview and reorder. And design tools, that one's a little bit more advanced. This is the one, if you've got the ability to set up custom templates, and I'll explain that kind of at the end when we're done setting up a template. But you have the ability to create a design and then save it as a template, and it'll show up in here. So this is where you'll be able to search for your different templates that you've created. You'll be able to show different categories, whether you've created them or they're Messenger templates only, and you'll be able to search for them by the series. Text items, this is just any text items that you can put in here that you've saved on your own, or all text items, including the ones provided by default from Messenger. And by text items, I would mean like the different poems, different psalms, quotations, things like that. Design elements, it works kind of the same way. This would be any different images or any type of clip art that you've added yourself, or ones that we have in here as well. And that's going to be a little bit laggy when I click on all those because it has to populate the whole list. But this is more advanced, so we may or may not get into this. Let's look back here at menu. Let's look at the help page really quick before we get into case information. So when you click on the help page, it's always going to pull up this new tab. And there's a whole bunch of information out here. If you're on the webinar, you've already found this link. We have our contact information, including the after-hours support, schedule, as well as email. When it's after hours, you have to use the email during those times because we won't be manning the phones, but we will be watching for emails. And we can call you back if you need help during those times. And then we have our user guides. A lot of good information out here. Getting started, pretty basic stuff. Different resources and video tutorials. There's a good amount of stuff out here if you look for them. If you ever get stuck and let's say it's after hours, you can always come here to the help page, and there's a lot of information. You could pretty much find anything that you need to answer a question on here. Well, next we'll look at manage case info. This would be the first step. You come in here to manage your case info. You can do a search by name or case ID if you assign one, or you can do it by location, whether you've set it active or inactive, which in the fast track, if you don't want them to show up in that list by default of past cases, you can set cases inactive right here. That way, if you have older cases and you don't want them to pop up every time and you have a really big long list, you can turn certain ones off. And by default, it filters out by the past 2 weeks, so you can uncheck that. Or you can recheck it and apply the date range. Let's go into this McNally case. This is a good test case. So what you want to do is either double click this name or click on the edit. Now this gets us into all of our case information. So we have our 4 different tabs here up top. Basic information, which is just that. You can change any of this information that you do need. As I kind of mentioned before, I imported this case, so I already have all the information for the case in here. If you did a basic add a case, of course you'd have to put everything else in here on your own. I will mention, I always forget to mention, that when you want to delete a case out, you want to come here into the case info, and here's your delete button down here. So that's where that lives. And with the obituary here, if you want to copy and paste, like let's say out of Microsoft Word, or maybe you have the obit saved already on your website somewhere, the best thing to do would be to copy it out of Word or that other place, and you want to paste it as a plain text. So that would be Control-Shift-V. And programs like Word, especially, they have conditional formatting. It doesn't translate to a regular text box. So that's always your best option. Just paste it as plain text. That's the basic. I'll go ahead and click Save. Let's look at our Advanced tab here. Now we have our side drawers over here. First off, family members. Pretty self-explanatory here. Now, additional family members. We've got the option to show more here. Now, this is one of our managed lists. What you can do is you can click one, move it up and down within the list itself, and that'll reorder how it pulls into one of our designs by default. And of course, you can edit one, edit the information down here, or you can simply delete one out if you need to. Now, if you want to add, I'll just go ahead and put in a test, and I'll just put in brother. And now we have test brother, or I think I have another one, test grandson. And I failed to mention, we have predetermined types here that you can set them as. So we have spouse, brother, sister, son, daughter, grandchild, and other. If you want to specify something that's not on the list, that's when you have to click other, and then relation, we'll put in grandson. So that's how that works here. And I'll save the case. Now the next one down is genealogy. This is pretty self-explanatory. Paternal and maternal right there. Service info. Now we have a bunch of entries here that you can use if they do apply. So we have service information, and then we have a mass, and we have a prayer service, visitations, and then we get into our service participants here. This is kind of another one of our managed lists where you can edit the information, delete them out if you wish to. Let's go ahead and delete that. Or if you want to add a new one, see how I have my autofills that come in here. Test rabbi. We have different category types here as well. We've got the celebrant, clergy, honorary pallbearer, organist, other, and vocalist. Rule of thumb here, because the question comes up not too often, but often enough to mention it. If they're not showing up, let's say you have a service and the person presiding over the service isn't showing up, chances are it's because they weren't set up as clergy. By default, they've got to be set up as clergy, whether they're rabbi, deacon, pastor, what have you. If you set them up as clergy, then they'll pull into the design by default. Music selections, it's there if you need it, as well as the pallbearers, and as well as any sermon notes. And we'll go back up to, we have the final resting place drawer here. Pretty self-explanatory. All the final resting place information goes there. Military service info, if this applies, we have the spot to put information here. And then the expression guest and the floral express. I'm not going to get into these. These are separate add-ons that integrate with the Make It Personal program. But what the expression guest registry is in a nutshell, it's an electronic registry that people can sign on an iPad when you have a service in person. And then we also have a version that can be signed digitally through a link that you can include when you have a virtual service. And then the Floral Express Flowers, that's also another add-on. It's an app that you can put on your Apple or Android device. You can take pictures of the flower sets as well as the accompanying cards with them, upload those, and it'll integrate with this program, and you can can create register book pages and even service folders that has the printout of those flowers on it. And with the custom fields here, this is what we kind of looked at when we looked at location info and settings. So here's our custom fields that we specified, and you can put the information in here. And let's look at case images next here. I have a default photo here, but let's go ahead and upload some new photos. Of course, you know, the family might send you some photos, scan them in or whatnot, and you can select multiple photos that you want to use with your designs. I'm just going to grab a few and go ahead and upload those. And then we have a couple of options here. If you need to rotate them, you can rotate the photos. If you need to change which one is default, you can change defaults. You can also remove individual photos that you've uploaded if you wish. And then you can also, let's say, reorder. You can put one first or last, rearrange them, and update them. So that's the basics behind the case information itself, the case profile. We have the case designs tab, which is next. Yes, I'll save information. And this is where anything that you've designed for this decedent's case lives. As you can see, we have nothing set up yet. So we come over here, create new design. Let's go ahead and select that. And let's select the advanced designer because we want to look at all of our options. Now, real quick, Alan, before I create anything, what's something that you would like to see designed? I usually go into either a register book or a service folder, but it's up to you since you're the only one here. I want your input on this. All right, so we picked register book as the product. I will pick a more popular series with our family tree elements MIP. The size, there's only one size to this book, so yes, it is oversized. And the template, let's do the regular book oversized MIP. Okay, and as you can see, it's populated the design. And as I said before, what this did was it took that template that I chose, it took that basic layout and it pulled in all of McNally's information and put it in here. It puts in the photo, it puts in the name, it puts in the dates, all of that. And we'll look at that a little bit more. But first I kind of want to explain navigation here. We've got our initial panel, which is panel 1. This would be the front of the book. And then we have panel 2, panel 3, so on and so forth. And you can get to the other panels by using the ribbon. Up here you've got an undo and a redo. We'll look at that here when we start moving some stuff around. That'll basically let you undo and redo any changes that you've made on that page. But then once you leave the page, it resets that, so you can't come back to that original page and then try to undo and redo because it saved it already. So, and we can add and delete panels if you want to customize anything. Let's say you completely don't want this page at all. You can delete that panel. Or vice versa, you can add one back. And then below that we've got reorder. We can change the order of how they are in the layout. You can move it up, move it forward or move it back. Now when you're customizing this background button here, it becomes a little bit more important because what you'd like to do is to keep the flow of the book running. So if you look over here to the right, if you have your panels, this would be front, back, front, back, front, back. Kind of keep everything in line. Like let's say you remove one and it puts everything out of sync. You can come here and select them. That way you have the representation of whether it's the front or the back. That's where that becomes handy. And the grid here does that simply. There's a grid for alignment and visualization. You can turn that off and on. Field underline. Let's say this is a field here, this is a field here, this would be a heading, this would be a name field. You can turn the underline off and on, and it's going to underline everything in that box. And then field names. This comes in handy when you want to see the template layout, what information the template's calling for. So let's say you didn't know where this date was coming from. You could turn on the field names, and of course it tells you right here, date died. So it's pulling in the date deceased information from the case and putting it there. And then we've got panel view. Panel view doesn't work when you're in things that have single panels. We do have things that are 2 per panel, like a 2-up copy service folder or acknowledgement. And then we have like the 4-up bookmarks and then the 8-up prayer cards. But this doesn't apply to this. And then, of course, we have at the bottom here our zoom. We got different zoom options. Besides navigation, we've got a couple buttons here. You can go back to the fast track, go back to the case profile. Fast track will be just that. Yes, save changes. Well, no then. Here it takes us back to the fast track. But let's go back to the advanced designer. As I said before, the fast track is more simplistic. You don't have nearly the customization. So that's why we like to run through the advanced designer to kind of show you all the options. We'll get into tools and stuff and case info and adding items and stuff. But here in the actual the canvas area here, think of all these items. It's kind of like living in their own box. Whether it's a heading, whether it's a name, a date, or even like a field label right here for place, all these kind of live in their own box. And you can change the size of them. You can grab them, move them around. We have a little handle here to the right, and you can rotate them around if you wish. This is for images and things like that, if you want to rotate something around. And you can delete things out. The red X right there, or just hit delete on the keyboard. You can click something. Instead of dragging it, you can use the keyboard. It was a little bit laggy on me, but I arrowed up. You can move stuff that way. And here's our undo button up top. I'm just going to undo all those changes that I made. So we got rid of all the changes except for date, because I failed to mention that keyboard moves, they actually don't work with the undo. Little tidbit of knowledge. If you move something with the keyboard, then it doesn't register with the undo. Let's come over here. Let's look at case info. When you go to case info, it's basically giving you access to that case information that we looked at before in the menu. Manage case info. You can come here and you can add anything into the design. You can change any information except for these combo fields. You see how this is grayed out? This is a combination of 2 different things. So it's the born date and the place. You'd have to change date born and place of birth. Just like with the full name, it's a combo field of all these different fields. So let's say we want to add a middle name. Watch here, it'll change it here, and it'll also change it here. So if I put in Sue, then we've updated. Let me zoom back in. There, that makes it better. And as well, any of this information here, like we can't change the location information because we'd have to go back into the menu, but we have location information here. Let's say you're on a service folder, maybe the back page of a book or something, or maybe even the front page. You can click anything over here at the plus side, and you can add that information. So This is just an example, of course, so you can put in any of this information that you want. This also holds true with anything here as well in Advanced Designer. In Advanced, you've got the family members, and you have full access to that managed list of other members of the family here as well. You can manage and edit those family members if you wish right here. And we have all the other tabs as well. And once again, if you have to make any changes, let's say let's just get rid of Hawkins. There we go. So now anything in my design, this will be updated as well. And if you wanted to add this, you simply click that, add it, move it around. Let's look at case images here really quick. You've got the option to go ahead, click on an image. It'll drop it right into the middle of your design. Let's clean some of this up. Quick tip, what I just did, I clicked where there were no boxes. I can hover here, it highlights there's a box there, but over here there's nothing. I'm going to left click and drag, kind of like on Windows desktop, and I selected all of that. Now I'm going to hit delete, and it gets rid of all that. I'm going to take my photo, and let's just put it over here. Now once you do hover over and click on a photo and add it, you can swap them out too by clicking and dragging. You can drag right into a different photo, and it'll just start to swap those out for you. We'll get into the photo tool set here in just a little bit, the different tools that you can use with the photos. Let's go back. Let's look at items next. And I'll delete these out so we have a clean canvas. Here, whenever you're customizing, you've got the option for 3 different text boxes here. The basic difference behind these would be the font, the size, and the color. So we can add in a simple text box, a field label, or a heading. And you can see how they're a little bit different. They're predetermined based on the template, how the template is set up. They all have that kind of their own font and size and color assigned to them. And anytime you add a text box like that, or any text box in general, you click it once, double click into it, and now you can modify everything. So let's just say, can't type, testing text, and now it updates it. The heading, you can do the same. Now the blank line is the only one that's different. It's just a blank line. It's not a text item. Future Joe here for editing. Let's look down below and get to our design elements and text items. We've added a search feature here since the last video, or since the last recording. So with the design elements and the text items, what you can do is you can search for a specific item. But what you can also do is choose a category in the drop-down. Now we have a bunch of different categories here, and the reason why we have so many, and some of them may be empty, like the Celtic Cross, is that these would be admin-only design elements. So they're design elements that only we can see on our end because of licensing and royalties, things like that. We use them, and the customers aren't allowed to have access to them, but you can add your own. And think of design elements as like clip art, and then think of your text items as true text. So what you could do is you could go through and you could look for specific things that you may have in mind, like arrows per se. We have some clip art here for arrows, different designs. But if there were something that you wanted to add, of your own, you can always click this add button. What you can do is give it a name, and let's just call this Test Dove 2, because I have another one out there. And you can pick a category that you want to actually put that into. And I believe we were going to go with legendary for this one. And now you can browse for an actual piece of clip art. Let's go ahead and add this. So let's say open and let's say save. Now what we can do is we can go through our list and find that in the legendary, or use that newer search feature. I'm going to put in test, and then I've got a whole bunch of different things that I have in here for testing. It didn't pop in, which is just taking a moment to load, but I can click on my test dove. Apologize, it took a moment to load, but once it loads in, you can click on it and it'll add it right into your design just like everything else. So we can grab it. Oops, I clicked it twice, I apologize. So we can grab it, click on it, we can move it to wherever we want to, and we can do the resize. But a good pointer here, see how we change the height versus width on this photo or this design element. We delete that and then re-add that. We can move it around. Then we can hold shift on the keyboard and then grab one of the corners and then move it in. Now by doing shift, what you're actually doing is keeping the aspect ratio. You're keeping the height versus the width on this particular design. And let's look here at the text items next. These work the same. You can search for a particular text item that we have in the library, or you can go by the drop down. And this is a lot more of a condensed list, a little bit easier to work with. And let's say we wanted to go with verses. Let's say we wanted to go 23rd Psalm. Let's go ahead and drop that in, and let's scroll down. Now we can place this wherever we need to. Let me delete that. We can do the same thing. We can change the size of our box, change the shape to get it to fit wherever we need to. We can do a search here as well. Let's say we wanted Lord's Prayer. Right there we have the Lord's Prayer. So you can do a search, make it a little bit easier to find what you're looking for. And I'll go ahead and delete that out. Now the add button works the same way. You can click add, give something a name, something that we don't have in a library that you want to add yourself to be able to use on anybody's cases moving forward. Give it a name. You can say, testing text, what have you. Select your category, and then you can copy and paste your text using that trick that I showed you. Usually paste as plain text. You can go ahead and paste that in and save it, and then it'll save it into the category that you chose. So I'm not going to go ahead and save anything new here, but that's a general idea of using your design elements and then your text items. Keep in mind, design elements, we do have some things that are images, basically images of prayers and things like that. Let's say we were to go to 23rd Psalm. We can find one here, click on it and add it. But this truly is an image. So you can't change the font and you can't change your text color here because it is truly an image. Let's go ahead and jump out of that. I just wanted to kind of explain that. As opposed to coming in here and looking at a true text item. So with that, the next step would be to go back to Designer, to get back to our tool set. And I'm going to quickly delete those out, just for more room. So the next item that we do have, being that this is a text here, is our tool set, and we've got text items here in the tool set. So if you have this text, you can change the font from our list of fonts here. Say we want Raphael, you can change the font size. And this little caution symbol right here to the top left, that's just telling you that the text that you have, that font and that size, won't physically fit within the confines of the box here. You can change the color here next. If you know your RGB values, if you want to change, the red, green, blue values of it, you can manually put those in here. If not, you can always just go with our predetermined colors. The series color is always on top. So you can match the series just like that. And you can bold everything, italicize everything, and underline it. Of course, we don't want to underline. That would just look terrible. Now, the global font control. I'll touch on this, but this, I'm sorry, that's what that little world symbol is right there. This little world guy right here. So we click that. This is our global font. Typically, when you're in like a register book, you might not want to use this for, let's say, headings. Field labels, fields, and text would probably be okay. But headings is the one that you want to look out for, because we have usually 2 or 3 different heading sizes throughout the book. So if you were to go ahead, select a default font per se, and select the default font size and a color and a style, and you hit update, every single heading in this book is going to change to that. Books don't typically work well with this, but things like service folders where you don't have nearly as many headings on each page, those are fine. Field labels, they would be okay. As I said, fields, text, and lines within the book, those might be okay. But that's there so you can change everything throughout the entire design. And here we've got alignment within this box itself. So right now we are center justified, left, right, and block style. Block's not working too well for some reason right now. And then within the box itself, you've got top, middle, bottom. Kind of see that a little bit better if I make the box bigger. Let's look next. Let me scroll up at the alignment stuff. So this works with multiple different boxes activated. Let me go ahead and get rid of some of this stuff. Let's say I were to highlight all of these. What you can do to create columns, you can tell things to align left, and that's furthest most left, but these underlined boxes are the only exception because they go out to this outside edge. So let's get rid of that. So what you can do is select multiples, as I said, align left, and it's always to the furthest. We can go furthest to the right, furthest to the top, furthest to the bottom. And I'm going to undo those, because we can also use that in conjunction with the distribution tools here. Let's say I want to have these all in a nice vertical column. This will work with anything, any text boxes. If you want to have something or create your own something in a vertical column, make everything the same width and the same height. Then what you can do is you can align left or right, because it's furthest to the left, furthest to the right, come back and auto distribute. Now you can remove empty fields if you have any. You can auto distribute horizontally, left to right, or vertically up and down. We can set a group spacing. Usually 1 point spacing is fine. You can see how it might kind of space out other things. Usually 1 point's fine. Let's click auto distribute. All right, when I hit that, that's when I can take this box, or this column basically, and I can adjust the height of it, where it'll evenly space out all of those, no matter how it is vertically. And of course, you could take the whole thing and then just kind of move it around to wherever you need it on the page. The next big thing is the photo tools. Let's look at panel number 2 here. It's the collage panel. So looking at our photo tools that we have, we click the little penny guy, that's what I call him, and then you can select a photo. Now we have some options over here. The first one would be the border. You can turn this down completely to get rid of that border, or you can turn it up to make it thicker. And then you also have the color option here. As I said, the RGB, you can select that, or you can select one of the predetermined ones that we have. For visualization, I'm going to turn this down all the way. So I'm going to reselect the photo, drop shadow. That's this little shadow that we have going on here. Matter of fact, I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. We have the little drop shadow effect, and you can turn that off and turn it back on. And I'll leave that turned off for now. Let's look at the feather vignette. Now when we look at this is the amount of softening that it'll put on the edge of the photo from the outside going in. So you can turn up the feather, and then it softens it up from the outside moving inward. And then the opacity of it, this is what gives it that kind of ghosting or watermark effect. Right now it's not opaque. We can turn down the opacity, and this will give us that kind of ghosting and watermark effect. Where that comes in handy, a lot of people, what they'll do is they will take this and they'll put a photo of something, related to the decedent or something that was a hobby of theirs, whatnot, and they'll put it behind the relatives and friends pages. So the relatives and friends pages in the book that they sign, they'll have a nice photo behind it. Shrink that back down, and I'm going to raise this back up to 100. Turn this back down. The last options that we have is cropping to rectangles, or rounded rectangle or oval. That's just the outside edge. So we've got a rounded rectangle, kind of see it here better. And we have oval. Now a couple of the tricks that we do have, you can highlight the photo again, and you can click on this little edit pencil symbol here, and that's where you get your brightness and contrast settings. So we can turn down the brightness a touch, and here's where you set the masking or the cropping or the focus, whatever you want to call it, of the photo. You can make this smaller or larger, but it keeps the aspect ratio of what's on the page. So we can set the focus and save it, but if we want to change the shape of it, we have to change the shape out here. So we can change the shape and then reset. Now the last thing that we have for photos would be the layering effect, and that is these little boxes here. The dark blue box represents where this photo is going to be compared to the other things in the layout. So if we take this over here, see how it's behind this photo, we can send it to the front, and now it's on top of it. Same with this thing, we could redo that, send that one back to the front. And if you see here, let's do a layering effect. Let's take this one, put it on top. So now we have a layering effect. This one's on top of this one, which is on top of this one. So it's this little collage effect that we have. And the last thing that we do have is the little, Linda calls it the eye bubble. So it's the information. Click on the eye bubble, it tells you what case you're in, what your product is, your series, and then the template that you've chosen. And when we're all done, we can click on Save. And I'll show you really quick the print. When you click on Print, I believe this might be a 34 panel design here, the layout. You've got the option to select all the panels, none of the panels, odds for fronts, evens for backs. And what you can do when you want to customize, say select none, and let's say I want to choose this page, and you can specify the pages that you want in your actual design. And you would scroll down to the bottom and generate the PDF. Now with this PDF, you're going to want it set up to open with a PDF viewer, something like, we recommend just getting Adobe Acrobat Reader DC free online. It's a free download. We even have a link to it on the help page under other resources. So this is what you'll want to see. You'll want to see Adobe Acrobat Reader DC, unless you prefer a different PDF viewer, and then you'll see the different pages. And side note, when you do go to print, you'll want to make sure that your print size matches your document. What I mean by that is in your printer, you can actually set up custom page sizes to match all the different books that we have, as well as like our no-tab prayer card, as well as like our smaller 2-up service folders and acknowledgments. And if you don't know how to do that, you can always, number one, look it up on the help page to get a general idea of how to do it. But if it's beyond the scope, you can always call in and we can set up those custom page sizes to match the sizes for what you need to print from us. And I'll close out of the print window here. The last thing I'll touch on, right here in the Advanced Designer, we don't have it in the Fast Track, but in the Advanced Designer, we've got the little down arrow next to Save. I can save the design, that's what Save button does by default, but I can also save it as a template. Now, what I mean by save it as template, all the changes that I made to this layout, I can save them to a new template. That way, moving forward, all the changes will be there. And that's the most powerful thing that the program has to offer moving forward, is once you get an idea of how you want your designs to look, you customize them, you save them as a template. That's way, we hear it sometimes called branding. I always get if so-and-so down the street sees a register book or a service folder and it looks like this, they know it came from us. So that's where you get into that whole branding thing. So once you get your template tuned in based on our basic template, you save it as your own. So I'm going to call it Joe's New, this was Family Tree. And I'm going to save it. And now what that would do is that would give you the ability, I'm going to go back to Fast Track. Actually, I want to go back to Manage Case Info. So what that'll do is if you go into, let's say, the next decedent's case that you set up and make it personal, you go into their case, and you would go into their case designs, create a new, and I want to say Advanced Designer. Underneath the products, you find that same product that you customized. So I want to say Register Book, and then I want to go with that Family Tree Elements MIP. Yes, it's oversized. Sorry, now I have here my new Joe's New Family Tree. So I create this template. So I create the design based off of that template. And now for this new case, that layout is going to be exactly the same. And you'll see it pop in. This is one of my more funnier cases, but I love the guy and love the movie. So let's look at panel 2. My panel 2 is going to look exactly the same. That's my same layout that I had for that previous case. And then I believe panel 3, yeah, it has my information here that I put in, and it has my column, and it has my psalm right here. So that's when you get into the customization of it. That's basically how those custom templates work.